There is nothing you need to do to enter this space. It is already open. Even before attention settles, even before the body adjusts, something here is already holding everything exactly as it is, not tightly, not deliberately, simply, evenly. An open field does not ask for participation. It does not require belief or effort. It does not need to be reached. You may notice how often the system is subtly bracing, orienting, preparing, maintaining a sense of readiness. Not because something is wrong, but because this has become familiar. Continuous low-level holding, continuous adjustment. This moment does not require that. Nothing is being evaluated here. Nothing is being directed toward improvement. The field you are in now does not sharpen or narrow. It does not demand focus. It does not collapse experience into a point. It remains wide enough to include movement, thought, sensation, and absence without privileging any of them. If there is activity, it can move. If there is quiet, it can rest. If there is uncertainty, it does not need to resolve. An open field does not oppose noise. It simply does not amplify it. Sometimes the body recognizes this first. A slight reduction in background effort. A sense that posture does not need to be held so carefully. That awareness does not need to lean forward, not relaxing into something, just no longer holding against it. You are not entering a state. You are noticing what does not change states. This field is not calm in contrast to disturbance. It is calm in the way a large space remains unaffected by what passes through it. Movement does not disturb it. Stillness does not define it. Nothing here needs to be centered. Nothing needs to be brought back. The field is already coherent without correction. You may feel the tendency to check, is this working? Am I doing this right? That impulse belongs here too. It does not interrupt anything. Nothing you notice removes you from the field. Nothing you fail to notice excludes you from it. This is not a place you stay by effort. It remains whether attention tightens or loosens. For a moment, allow experience to exist without managing its shape. Not as an instruction, just as an allowance. As if the field itself were doing the holding and you were no longer required to assist. There is no edge to this space that you can fall out of. No depth you are expected to reach. Only openness. Already present. Already enough. Nothing is asking you to go inward here, and yet, without being guided, attention often settles on its own, not because it's being pulled, but because the need to orient outward softens when nothing is required. In an open field, there is no inside or outside to navigate. There is only inclusion. What appears is already allowed. What fades does not need to be followed. Descent here does not mean depth. It means reduction. Less background effort, less monitoring, less subtle tension around experience. Not a dropping into something lower, but a release of what was being held unnecessarily high. The body often responds first, not dramatically, just small changes. The sense that muscles don't need to stay slightly engaged, that breath does not need to be adjusted, that awareness can widen instead of aim. There is no instruction in this, only a permission that was never formally granted but has always been available. You may notice how much energy has been spent maintaining orientation, knowing where you are in relation to things, tracking time, holding context. Even when resting, this orientation often continues quietly in the background. In an open field, orientation becomes optional. Experience does not collapse when it's not being referenced. It becomes simpler, Thoughts may still arise, sensations may still shift, but they no longer feel like signals that require response. They pass through without changing the field that holds them. Nothing needs to descend deliberately. Nothing needs to arrive. This is not a transition into stillness. Stillness does not need to be reached. Instead, there is a quiet recognition. The field does not move with what moves. It does not tense with what tenses. It does not resolve with what resolves. It remains consistent without effort. If you sense moments of drifting, of spacing out, of not quite tracking what's being said, that is not a problem. The field does not require attention to stay intact. Presence is not something you maintain here. It is what remains when maintenance pauses. You might feel a subtle sense of being held, not emotionally, not personally, but structurally, as if experience itself is supported without needing your participation. Nothing is being organized. Nothing is being optimized. And because nothing is being tightened, something essential becomes noticeable, not as an insight, but as an absence. The absence of pressure to locate yourself in the moment. You are not behind experience. You are not ahead of it. You are not even positioned within it. There is simply the field open enough to allow everything, stable enough to require nothing. Let this moment continue without adjustment. Not as a technique, not as a focus, just as what is already happening once interference eases. There is no inner space to enter here, nothing hidden, nothing separate. The idea of an inner realm often implies a boundary, something behind experience, beneath it, or deeper than it. But in an open field, that distinction softens. What is called inner is simply what is no longer being referenced outward, not withdrawn, not turned inward, just unburdened from orientation. When attention is no longer tasked with tracking, comparing, or positioning, experience becomes quieter, not because content disappears, but because it no longer needs to be managed. The field does not become smaller. It becomes less organized around a center point. You may notice that awareness does not feel located anywhere specific. Not in the head, not in the chest, not behind the eyes. Location becomes less important when nothing is being aimed. This is not dissociation. It is de-emphasis. Experience continues, but without hierarchy. Sensation, thought, silence, sound, none are elevated above the others. None are asked to explain themselves. The inner realm, in this sense, is not a place. It is the absence of demand. There may be moments where nothing stands out. No dominant sensation, no clear thought, no emotional tone. This is not emptiness in contrast to fullness. It is simply a lack of emphasis. Nothing is missing. The field does not require meaning to remain stable. It does not require narrative to feel complete. Often, the system is conditioned to look for something to anchor, to breath, body, voice, rhythm. Here, anchoring is unnecessary. The field itself provides coherence without a reference point. If attention drifts, it drifts within the same openness. If it sharpens within the same openness. Nothing moves you closer or farther away. The inner realm is not accessed by effort. It reveals itself when effort is no longer organizing experience. You might notice subtle fluctuations, moments of clarity, moments of vagueness. These are not indicators of progress or loss. They are simply textures moving through a stable field. Nothing here needs to be stabilized. Nothing needs to be sustained. The sense of me experiencing this may soften, not disappear, but become less central. Experience does not need a narrator to occur. This is not about losing identity. It is about identity no longer being required to manage the moment. What remains is quiet coherence. Not dramatic, not luminous, just steady enough to go unnoticed unless something stops competing with it. There is no inner depth you are expected to reach, no threshold you must cross. The field is already complete, whether noticed or not. Allow this to continue in its own way, not as practice, not as observation, simply as the absence of interference, moment by moment. Expansion here does not mean more. It does not mean widening attention or increasing awareness. It is the natural result of less being held. When effort recedes, experience does not collapse inward. It opens not by adding space, but by removing constraint. The field was never narrow. It was simply being compressed by continual reference. Expansion is subtraction, less framing, less orientation, less insistence that experience organize itself around a center. You may notice that sensations feel less personal, not distant, just less owned. They occur without requiring interpretation. Thoughts may appear without needing to be followed. Sound may register without pulling attention outward. Nothing needs to be included deliberately. Everything is already included automatically. The field does not expand towards something. It reveals that it was never bounded. This can feel subtle, almost unremarkable. The system is accustomed to associating expansion with intensity, clarity, or insight. Here, expansion is quiet. It is the absence of compression that once made experience feel smaller. There may be a sense that awareness is no longer positioned behind experience, watching it, nor is it immersed in content. It simply allows, not allowing as an action, allowing as a condition. The field does not need to adjust when something arises. It does not tighten around discomfort or brighten around ease. It remains even, regardless of what passes through. Expansion does not change what appears. It changes the relationship to appearance. You might notice a gentle continuity, one moment not clearly separated from the next. Time feels less segmented when nothing is being tracked. This is not timelessness, it is reduced measurement. Nothing here needs to be prolonged. Nothing needs to be protected. If there is a sense of openness, it does not need to be held. If there is no sense of openness, nothing has closed. The field is not an experience you remain inside. It is the context in which experiences appear and dissolve. Expansion does not culminate. It does not reach a peak. It stabilizes by not trying to. There is no correct way this should feel, no expected texture. The field remains available whether experience feels light or dense, quiet or active. It does not depend on your awareness of it. For now, let experience continue without correction, not as a technique, not as a choice, simply as what happens when nothing interferes. The shift here is not dramatic. Nothing turns on, nothing arrives. It is not a movement toward light, but a recognition of what was never obscured. When interference lessens, something becomes apparent, not as brightness, not as clarity, but as consistency. A stable quality that does not fluctuate with experience. This is not illumination, in contrast to darkness. It is visibility without emphasis. The field does not glow. It does not announce itself. It simply remains unchanged as experience changes. You may notice that attention no longer feels strained, not focused, not dispersed, just unburdened. The effort to maintain presence has quietly dissolved, and with it, the sense that something needs to be sustained. This is the shift, not into something new, but out of unnecessary effort. The word lumen here does not refer to light as sensation. It refers to openness that allows everything to be seen without distortion, without preference, without resistance. The field does not highlight what matters. It does not dim what does not. Everything is equally permitted. There may be a sense that experience feels more transparent, not because content has thinned, but because it no longer blocks awareness of the field itself. Thoughts, sensations, and sounds no longer feel like obstacles. They are simply events passing through a stable medium. Nothing needs to be understood. The mind may try to name this, to categorize, to mark the moment. That impulse is familiar. It does not interfere. It also does not need to be followed. The shift does not belong to time. It does not signal progression. It is simply what becomes noticeable when nothing is being defended. The field does not brighten when attention recognizes it. It does not dim when attention moves elsewhere. It does not depend on being noticed. There is no responsibility to remain here, no obligation to carry this forward. The system often associates value with intensity, insight, or emotional response. This shift offers none of those guarantees. It is quiet enough to be overlooked and stable enough to remain regardless. This is not a state to return to. It does not leave. It is the background that was never absent. For now, allow this recognition to exist without commentary. Not as something to preserve, not as something to deepen, simply as the field noticing itself without effort. Integration does not require effort here. Nothing needs to be carried forward or applied. What integrates is not an experience, but the absence of separation between moments. The field does not need to be remembered for it to remain operative. It does not rely on continuity of attention. Life does not interrupt the field. Activity does not replace it. Integration happens because nothing was removed in the first place. Often, integration is framed as bringing something subtle back into daily experience. But an open field does not stay behind when movement resumes. It does not belong to quiet moments alone. It remains present during activity, conversation, decision, motion unchanged by content. You may notice that nothing needs to be defended as you reorient. The field does not collapse when attention shifts. It does not fragment when complexity returns. There is no contrast to manage. Integration here is indistinguishable from normal experience, except for the absence of extra effort. The subtle pressure to hold things together, to keep track, to remain aligned, has eased, not eliminated, just no longer required. The field does not care whether experience is smooth or uneven. It does not prefer calm over movement. It does not need circumstances to cooperate. Nothing needs to be protected from disturbance. Nothing needs to be restored after distraction. You are not integrating the field into life. Life is occurring within the field. This means nothing special needs to be done as the moment changes. No reminder is necessary. No anchor is required. If attention becomes narrow, it narrows within the same openness. If it becomes diffuse, it diffuses within the same openness. Integration does not feel like stability. It feels like absence of correction. There may be moments when this seems irrelevant, unremarkable, or distant. That does not indicate loss. The field does not withdraw when it is ignored. It does not fade with forgetfulness. It does not strengthen with remembrance. The habit of referencing experience, checking, comparing, evaluating may reappear. That habit is not an error. It is simply another movement passing through. Nothing needs to change. Integration is complete when nothing is being integrated. There is no final position to hold, no alignment to maintain. The field is already in place, before effort, during effort, and after effort. Allow experience to continue on its own terms, not because it should, but because it already is. Nothing needs to close here. Nothing needs to end. Return does not mean leaving the field. It means that orientation resumes while the field remains unchanged. Movement reappears, context reforms, and life continues without anything having been exited. There is no boundary crossed on the way back, no threshold behind you. The field does not recede as attention shifts. It does not withdraw as activity returns. It does not need quiet in order to remain intact. Return is simply the resumption of form. Sounds may become more distinct. Sensation may regain definition. Thought may begin organizing again. None of this replaces what has been present throughout. The field does not compete with experience. It holds it. Nothing needs to be remembered from this time. Nothing needs to be brought forward. The tendency to mark this moment, to decide what it meant, or whether it was enough, may arise. That tendency is part of the same openness. It does not alter what remains. Return does not require grounding. Nothing floated away. You have not been elsewhere. The field was present when this began. It remains present now. There is no special state to leave gently, no depth to surface from, just continuity. If the mind reaches for conclusion, it finds none. Not because something is missing, but because nothing was framed as an event. This was not a passage, it was a pause in interference. And even that pause did not need to be sustained. Return happens on its own, without instruction. Orientation reappears when needed. Attention engages where it must. The field does not follow you. It does not stay behind. It remains as the condition in which everything continues to occur. Nothing here has changed you. Nothing here needed to. There is no signal to move on, no cue to act. Just this moment, already unfolding. Nothing more is needed. No summary, no takeaway. What has been present does not need to be named again. It does not benefit from repetition. It remains whether acknowledged or not. This moment does not require closure. It is complete without being finished. The field does not wait for the next thing. It does not anticipate what follows. Sound, movement, thought all continue naturally, without disturbing what holds them. There is no reason to linger and no reason to leave. Just this, unfolding, uninterrupted, already whole.